by Dat Hong Sao Na. Van witnessed a person's death for the first time more than a year ago, back when she was still in Vietnam. Seeing someone die means watching them transition from the world of the living, suddenly stepping into the afterlife. That person was Mr. Tho, who lived 3 houses away from Van's in the same small alley in Ward 10, Tan Ben district. It wasn't because they were neighbors that Van paid special attention to him. In reality, each neighbor had their own life, and they rarely interacted. Moreover, he was much older than Van. If she were to address him properly, she should have called him Uncle. However, Van was close to him simply because he was a bus driver. On her daily commute from home to work, whether she wanted to or not, she had to see him at least once every morning. There was a time when buses were an extremely popular means of public transportation, and every trip was packed with passengers. But when Vietnam transitioned to a market economy, the people of Saigon rushed to buy motorbikes. And motorcycle taxis, XEOM, also flourished. Buses gradually became less popular because they were slow-moving in the crowded streets, where few people obeyed traffic rules. Only passengers without any other means of transportation, like Van, were reluctantly dependent on buses. With fewer passengers, whenever Van stepped onto the bus, Mr. Tho would often cheerfully strike up small talk. Even though, in principle, he wasn't supposed to chat while driving, Van happily responded, choosing an empty seat near him to chat and pass the time on the way to work. For the most part, their conversations were just polite formalities. From time to time, if something unusual happened in Van's alley, they would have a new topic to discuss. Mr. Tho had no wife or children. He lived with his older brother, shared the same household registration, and considered his brother's family as his own. At 45 years old, his face was deeply lined with worries. His skin was dark and weathered, and the slightly long hair at the front always drooped over his forehead, which Van found irritating to look at. He rarely smiled, though when he did, his smile was bright, revealing teeth as even as corn kernels. Unfortunately, they were always yellowed by cigarette smoke. Mr. Tho was a heavy smoker. He always carried a pack of Mai cigarettes, a type of locally made black tobacco that few people smoked. Whenever traffic was jammed, he would step out to take a few puffs, sometimes just a couple of drags, before climbing back into the driver's seat. People in Saigon smoked a lot, so no one found it annoying or was particularly bothered by the smoke. One morning, on her way to work as usual, Van sat in the seat right behind Mr. Tho, chatting with him about a scandalous affair in the neighborhood. The bus was running smoothly when, all of a sudden, Van was startled to see it veer sharply across the road, climb onto the sidewalk, crash into a tree trunk, and come to a halt. The bus had collided, but Mr. Tho had slumped over the steering wheel, causing the horn to blare continuously. Luckily, the sidewalk was wide, and a large tree blocked the way, so the bus didn't run over any pedestrians or crash into a house. Passengers panicked, jumping to their feet, shaking Mr. Tho by the shoulders and calling out to him, "Hey, Mr. Tho, what happened? Lost control of the wheel? Wake up, Mr. Tho!" But no matter how much they shook him, he didn't respond. The passengers exchanged uneasy glances. Then, one by one, they got off to find other transportation, worried about being late for work. A few curious people, mostly regular passengers, stayed back with Van, helping to lift Mr. Tho into a sitting position. The moment they did, the blaring horn finally stopped. Mr. Tho's head slumped to one side, his face pale and lifeless, his mouth slightly open, his eyes staring blankly, but clearly devoid of life. He had died of sudden cardiac arrest, but people around him simply assumed he had suffered a stroke. No one wanted to believe he was truly gone, because it had happened so suddenly. Van anxiously looked around and asked, "Does anyone have some medicated oil? Any kind will do, please, let me borrow some." The crowd murmured, each person voicing an opinion. "Oh God, Someone run to the intersection and call the police, another said. We need an ambulance, not the police. Some people pulled at his hair, shook his shoulders, or pressed hard against his chest, hoping to revive him before taking him to the hospital. But it was all useless. Someone sighed in despair. It's over. He's really gone. Must have been a stroke, 100%. Oh dear, the wind is really deadly these days. With that, people started trickling off the bus, stepping away, not wanting to get involved when the authorities arrived for questioning. But Van couldn't leave. She couldn't just abandon her neighbor, clinging to the hope that he wasn't completely gone, that he had only fainted. She got off the bus, pale-faced, looked around, and waved down a motorized rickshaw, Desolate Mai. She asked the driver to help move Mr. Tho down and take him to the hospital. Please hurry. Maybe he can still be saved. He's probably just suffocating. He's not completely gone yet. She reached into her wallet to pay the driver, but he just looked at her in confusion and asked, Aren't you going with him? If you're not coming, I'm not taking him. You think I'm stupid? Van pleaded. Sir, please have some compassion. He's unconscious. Just help take him to the hospital. I still have to go to work. The rickshaw driver's eyes widened, and he snapped. Unconscious? No way, he's dead. If I take him to the hospital, they'll start asking questions. They need a family member to handle this. Then looked at Mr. Tho once more. He really was gone. His lifeless body lay slumped in the rickshaw, his head tilted to one side, eyes still wide open, mouth still slightly agape. She said hesitantly, But I'm not his family either. The rickshaw driver, both frustrated and baffled, stamped his foot and shook his head furiously. He almost swore, but held back in front of a woman. Instead, he snapped, If you're not his family, why are you trying to take him to the hospital? Are you crazy? What are you gonna say when the police start questioning you about his death? It was then that Van realized she had unwittingly put herself in a difficult situation. But part of her still felt a duty to help, and another part knew she was already too deep to back out now. She thought that the old man had just fainted, which moved her to find a way to save him and call Sikilo to take him to the hospital. Unexpectedly, he had already passed away. From the moment she heard Mr. Sikilo confirm that Mr. Tho was dead, Van suddenly felt a chill and couldn't even bring herself to look at him anymore. But what could she do now? Curious passers-by were gathering in larger numbers because Mr. Sikilo was gesturing wildly and speaking too loudly. Frustrated, he told Van, Damn it! What bad luck early in the morning! Now you help me carry him up and leave him on the bus. Then whoever wants to deal with it can deal with it. I won't be involved in this mess. He grabbed the corpse and told Van to lift Mr. Tho's legs. Van hesitated, standing still. Mr. Sikilo had to shout at her before she reluctantly helped. They struggled to carry the stiff body onto the bus, placing it behind the driver's seat. Then Mr. Sikilo quickly jumped off, rushed to his vehicle, and sped away, still cursing under his breath. Van got off the bus and stood hesitantly by the roadside, unsure whether to leave or wait for the police. A crowd gathered around, murmuring. Van felt detached, lost in thought. In the end, she decided to go inform Mr. Tho's family and take care of the funeral arrangements. Fate had arranged for him to die suddenly, and coincidentally, Van was the first to witness his unexpected passing while he was talking to her. Just over a month ago, Van had excitedly told him that she was waiting to move to Canada, sponsored by her English relatives. Mr. Tho had congratulated her, but she could hear the sadness in his voice, as if lamenting his own fate, a dream of traveling abroad with no path to achieve it. He had told Van, I heard you're going abroad. People say that's why you're determined not to get married yet. Van laughed and brushed it off. Well, before I leave, my family will surely host a farewell party for our neighbors. Please come celebrate with us. That's very kind of you, he said. I'd be honored. I must come to see you off. It felt like just yesterday they had that conversation. She hadn't left yet, hadn't even had the chance to invite him to the farewell party. And now, he was already gone. Then rushed to deliver the news, then accompanied Mr.